I'm just waiting for, there's a tab that needs to go off before I can see the screen nicely. Okay. Okay. In this verse, by verse translation of the Bhagavatam, Prabhupada was still working on the third canto. So to reach the 10th canto could take many years. But he was uncertain how many years longer he would live. And the thought of passing away without giving the world an authorized readable account of the 10th canto had been unbearable. Being the account of Lord Krishna's earthly pastimes, the 10th canto was the climax of Srimad Bhagavatam and the richest nectar of transcendental literature. Now Prabhupada had enough manuscript pages to print a first volume, complete with the many color illustrations he had commissioned his artists to paint. To print such a book would be expensive, and Prabhupada had no money, but he depended fully on Krishna and translated quickly in the quiet of early morning. At 4:30, Prabhupada's secretary, Purushottam, entered, followed by Yamuna Dasi. Purushottam offered arati to Prabhupada's small Radha Krishna deities, while Yamuna watched, eager to learn. Prabhupada sang prayers, accompanying himself on the harmonium. During Prabhupada's Mangal Arati ceremony, the other dozen or so disciples assembled for their own Mangal Arati at the temple. As they walked the damp pathway to the temple, they felt the cold air and heard the bell and Prabhupada singing. They could see through the pre-dawn mist the light coming from Prabhupada's window on the second floor, and the building looked like a lantern in the dark. The sound of the harmonium drifted mystically through the trees. Later that morning, some of the devotees brought Prabhupada several news articles about his London arrival. The Daily Sketch, with its headline, "Enter His Divine Grace Abhecharan Bhaktivedanta Swami," carried a foot-high photo of Prabhupada playing kartals. The Sun story, "Happiness is Hare Krishna," appeared with a photo of Prabhupada and the devotees. And the Daily Mirror showed Saraswati and one of the adult devotees. Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Okay, so before I start, I would like to welcome all of you to today's class. And I humbly seek the blessings of all the devotees because I am unqualified to do the service. Hare Krishna. So we'll start with our pranams. Om Ajnanatamarandhyasya Gyan Anjana Shalakaya Chaksur Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Sri Guruve Namaha. Namo Om Vishnupadaya Krishna Prishna Bhutale Srimati Bhaktivedanta Swamin iti namine. Namaste Saraswati Deve Gauravani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Vashtitai Deshatarine. Jaya Sri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Sri Advaita Gadadhar Shrivas Adi Gaur Bhakta Vrinda Vancha Kalpa Trubhyascha Kripa Sindhu Vyaivacha Patitanam Pavanabhyo Vaishnavabhyo Namo Namaha. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare. Hare Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. So today we are going to be reading 2 shlokas from Canto 5, Chapter 5, and the texts are 15 and 16. So it's 5, 5, 15 and 16. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. So our first text, 15. Putramscha sishyascha nirpo guruva malloka kamo mad anugrartaha itam vimanyu anushishyad atajyan nayujayet karmasu karma mudan kam yojayan manujortam labhyete nipatayanasta drisham hi garte. Putramscha shishyamscha nirpo guruva malloka kamo mad anugrahartaha itam vimanyu anushishyad atajyan nayojayet karmasu karma mudan kam yojayan manujortam labhyete nipatayanasta drisam hi karte. Putramscha shishyamscha nirpo guruva malloka kamo mad anugrahartaha etam vimanyu anushishyad atajyan nayojayet karmasu karma mudan kam yojayan manujortam labhyete nipatayan nastadrisham hi garte. Hare Krishna. Would anyone like to recite the shlok?
Hare Krishna Mataji, I am trying.
Hare Krishna Prabhu.
Putramscha shishyamscha nipo gurvo maloloka kamo mitu modanugrahartha ittam vimanuranu shishya datajikyan na jajayet karmashu karma muran kam jajayan manujartham labhe nipatayam nashtadrisham hi garte. Hare Krishna Mataji.
Thank you so much, Prabhu. Hare Krishna. Would anyone like to recite?
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Putramscha shishamscha nipo gururva malloko kamo mad anugrahartha ithyam vimanur anushishyadata jnana no yojayed karmashu karma mudan kam ojayan manujartham labheta nipatayan nashtadrisham hi garte. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Anyone else?
Hare Krishna Mataji, can I try?
Hare Krishna Mataji. Yes, please.
Putransh Shishyansh Nripo Gururvaha Mallok Kamo Mad Anugrahartaha Ittatham Vimanyu Vrnushishyad Jnana Na Yojayet Karmasu Karma Muran Kam Yamanu Jo Artham Labhet Nipatayan Drisham hi garte. Hare Krishna Mataji, Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji. I
Hare-
will recite.
Thank you.
Putramscha shishyamcha napur gurova malloka kama mat anugrahataha itam vimanyur anushishyat attajnana nayojata karmashu karma mundan kama yojan manuj artam labhata nipatayan nastadistam hi krate. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna Mataji, Dandavat Pranam.
Hare Krishna Mataji. Dandavat Pranam.
Putramscha Shishyamscha Nripo Gururva Malloka Kamo Matanugrahartha Itham Vimanyor Anushishyate Attaje Gyan Nayojayate Karmasu Karma Mudhan Kam Yojayan Manujo Artham Labhet निपत्यानमनस्तदृशं हि गर्ते. Thank you, Mataji.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare
Hare
Krishna.
Krishna.
Would
Hare
someone
Krishna.
Hare
Hare
Krishna,
Krishna
Mataji.
Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Putram cha sisyam cha nripo guruva malloka kamo mad anugraha harta etham vimanyur anusisyad atjnana nayojayat karmasu karma mudha kam yojayan manuja ratham labheta nipateyan nasta samhi garte. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Any volunteers now to read the synonyms?
Hare Krishna Mataji, can I please?
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. Yes.
Putran, the sons, Cha, and Shishyan, the disciples, Cha, and Ripaha, the king, Guruhu, the spiritual master, Va, or Mat Loka Kamaha, desiring to go to my abode, Mat Anugraha Arthaha, thinking that to achieve my mercy is the aim of life, Itham, in this manner, Vimanyuhu, free from anger, Anushishyat, should instruct, Atagnan, bereft of spiritual knowledge, Na, not, Yojayet, should engage, Karmasu, in fruitive activities, Karma Modhan, simply engaged in pious or impious activities, Kam, what, Yojayan, engaging, Manujaha, a man, Artham, benefit, Labheta, can achieve, Nipatayan, causing to fall, Nashtadrisham, one who is already bereft of his transcendental sight. He, indeed, Garte, in the whole. Hare
Thank you.
Krishna, thank you.
Hare Krishna. Would someone like to read the translation?
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
If one is serious about going back home, back to Godhead, he must consider the mercy of the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Samambonam, and chief aim of life. If he is a father instructing his sons, a spiritual master instructing his disciples, or a king instructing his citizens, he must instruct them as I have advised. Without being angry, he should continue giving instructions even if his disciple, son, or citizen is sometimes unable to follow his order. Ignorant people who engage in pious and impious activities should be engaged in devotional service by all means. They should always avoid fruitive activity. If one puts into the bondage of karmic activity his disciple, son, or citizen who is bereft of transcendental vision, how will one profit? It is like leading a blind man to a dark well and causing him to fall in. Hare Krishna. Thank you,
Hare
Mataji.
Krishna. Thank you, Mataji. And the purport, anyone would like to read the purport? It's a short one.
Hare Krishna Mataji, I am reading.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna.
Purport 5.5.50. It is stated in Bhagavad Gita 3.226. Na buddhi vedam janoid ajnana karma sanginam jashoe sarva karmani vidwan yukta samacharam. Let not the wise disrupt the minds of the ignorant who are attached to fruitive action. They should be encouraged not to refrain from work, but to work in the spirit of devotion. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Prabhuji. Hare Krishna. Okay, we're going to move on to the next slok. I'll recite it 3 times and then we'll move on to the synonyms just in the interest of time. Yeah. So 16. Loka svayam shreyasi nasta dristir yurtan samihita nikama kamaha anyonya vairaha shukalesha heto ananta dukham chana vedamudaha. Loka svayam shreyasi nasta dristir yurtan samihita nikama kamaha anyonya vaira Shukalesha heto ananta dukham chana vedamudaha lokasvayam shreyasi nastadrastir yortan samihita nikama kamaha anyonya vairaha shukalesha heto ananta dukham cha navedamudaha. Would someone like to read the synonyms?
Hare Krishna Mataji.
Thank you, Mataji.
Loka, people, Swayam personally, Shreyasi of the path of auspiciousness, Nosto Drishti, who have lost sight, ear, who, Orthan, things meant for sense gratification, Shomi Heta, desire, Nikamo Kamaha, having too many lusty desires for sense enjoyment, Onyanyo Boi, being envious of one another, Shukha Lesha Hetoho, simply for temporary material happiness, Ananta Dukkham, unlimited sufferings, Cha also, no, do not, Veda, no, Mudha, foolish. Hare Krishna Mataji.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare
Thank you.
Krishna. And the translation, please?
May I, Mataji, please?
Yes, please. Thank you, Mataji. Yes.
Translation by Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Due to ignorance, the materialistic person does not know anything about his real self-interest, the auspicious path in life. He is simply bound to material enjoyment by lusty desires, and all his plans are made for this purpose, for temporary sense gratification. Such a person creates a society of envy, and due to this mentality, he plunges into the ocean of suffering. Such a foolish person does not even know about this. Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Any volunteers for the purport?
Hare Krishna Mataji, can I read the purport, please?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Thank you. The word Nashta Drishtihi, meaning one who has no eyes to see the future, is very significant in this verse. Life goes on from one body to another, and the activities performed in this life are enjoyed or suffered in the next life, if not later in this life. One who is unintelligent, who has no eyes to see the future, simply creates enmity and fights with others for sense gratification. As a result, one suffers in the next life. But due to being like a blind man, he continues to act in such a way that he suffers unlimitedly. Such a person is a mudha, one who simply wastes his time and does not understand the Lord's devotional service. As stated in Bhagavad Gita 7.25, Naham prakashah sarvasya yoga maya samavritaha mudho yam nabhijanati loko mam ajam avyayam. I am never manifest to the foolish and unintelligent. For them, I am covered by my eternal creative potency, yoga maya. And so the deluded world knows me not, who am unborn and infallible. In the Katha Upanishad, it is also said, Avidyayam antare vartamanaha swayam dhiraha panditam manyamanaha. Although ignorant, people still go to other blind men for leadership. As a result, both are subjected to miserable conditions. The blind lead the blind into the ditch. Thank you, Hare Krishna.
Thank you so much, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Okay, so two very interesting shlokas, and there's a great relationship between the two shlokas. So here we find that Lord Rishabhadev is actually continuing his teaching to his 100 sons. So yes, 100, you've heard that right. So imagine a class of 100 students here in New Zealand and just one teacher. Yeah, you'd find that the teacher-student ratio here in New Zealand is 1:15 or 1:23 is the highest it will go. So 1:100 is fairly unimaginable in this day and age. But we find that Lord Rishabhadev is no ordinary king or person, right? His name tells it all. Rishabh means the best. And when he was born, he manifested the symptoms of the Supreme Lord, like he had the marks on the bottoms of his feet, such as the flag and the thunderbolt. So he's actually the avatar of the Supreme Lord. And he is coming to give not just his sons instructions, but all of us as well. So from the beginning of this chapter, he is imparting the knowledge to his sons about the futility of material attachments. And he's enlightening them about the real interest, the auspicious path of life, as we have read in the shlokas now, yeah? In text 16, he highlights that in contrast, the materialistic person does not know anything about this real self-interest, which is the auspicious path of life. So with this ignorance, materialistic people are trying to make this material world a wonderful place to live in. But all of this is happening only because They want to make material adjustments. And that's all that's happening. Material adjustments are being made. Right? So it's telling us straight away that this world is not really for us, because we shouldn't be adjusting something if it is perfect for us. So it's all about how can I become comfortable in this world? And they're always looking for plans to compensate for what is lacking. There's a nice story to highlight this regarding that ignorance, and that's the story, and you've heard this before, about the 3 prisoners. So there was a president or a dignitary that visited the prison, and he asked one of the prisoners, or he asked all of them actually, what can I do to improve your conditions here? Is there anything I can do to improve your life? And the first prisoner replied, oh yeah, the roof has a hole. And when it rains, this cell becomes so damp and uncomfortable. And then the second prisoner said, oh, my bed is broken, so I never really have a good sleep. And not a problem, said the president. That can all be sorted out. Those are simple things to sort out, so consider it done. And then the third prisoner had said, oh, the food here is terrible. Look at me. I'm getting all malnourished. Oh, that's not good, said the president. So just remember, your next meal is going to be the one that you'd really like to have, and I'll make sure that the standard is excellent. So here we have 3 prisoners looking at how they can make themselves comfortable in prison. What a place, prison. But what will an intelligent prisoner say? Anyone? What will an intelligent prisoner say?
How can I get out of this prison?
Haribol, that is it. How can I get out of this prison? So like those prisoners, most people are just over-endeavoring in this material world, trying to enjoy more and more, trying to get more wealth, more fame, more material knowledge. And this rat race is just getting more and more evident. We know this, right? When you speak to people who are in their 70s and 80s, they say that they had lived through the best times growing up, because in the day and age we're living in now, there is so much of stress, there is so much of competition, there is so much of expectations. But sadly, this ignorance keeps the conditioned soul entangled in the material world. And being entangled in the material world means to achieve their goals, they are just getting more and more involved in sinful activities. So as a result, the conditioned soul is having to endure repeated birth and death. Now, in 5.5.16, in the translation, it is said, he is simply bound to material enjoyment by lusty desires, and all his plans are made for this purpose. Right. And for temporary sense gratification, such a person creates a society of envy. And due to this mentality, he plunges into the ocean of suffering. And such a foolish person does not even know about this. Look at the ignorance, eh? So in this ignorance, plans are being made on how to enjoy. Srila Prabhupada tells a very nice story about a potter making plans to enjoy. So there was once this potter, and he started planning. Now I have made 4 pots, and I'm going to sell these pots. And when I get the profit, I'm going to make 10 pots. And then I'm going to sell those pots. And then I'm going to make more profit. And then I'm going to have 20 pots and 30 pots. And he went on 100 pots. Then I shall become a millionaire, he said. And then the man said, then I'm going to find the perfect wife. And I will marry her. But I am going to control her. And when she is disobedient, then I will kick her. And when he had these thoughts, it translated into his actions, and he kicked the pots that he had just made. And at this point, when Srila Prabhupada was talking about the story, he started to laugh, and he says, there, all his plans, all his dreams are gone. Right? So that was the end of his plan. So similarly, in this material world, plants are made to enjoy. But this material enjoyment, as it is described in Bhagavad Gita 18:38, is that it is nectar at the beginning, but it's poison at the end. But still, there's a great endeavor to get comfortable in this unnatural setting. We know if we take a fish out of water and give it a golden throne, give it lots of laddus, that fish is not going to be happy. He's not going to be happy. His natural environment is the water. That's where he will get his happiness. So similarly, we cannot be happy or find that true happiness in this material world. This material world is an unnatural setting or residence for the true self or the soul. So the soul we know as Satchid Anand. It's eternal, it's full of knowledge and bliss. But this material world, the opposite, as described in Bhagavad Gita 8:15, it's dukhalya mashastatam. It's temporary, it's illusory and miserable. Sounds sad, isn't it? But we need to look at how we can get out of it, right? So it's not like the end. So Srila Prabhupada says in a lecture that this material life is not real life. Real life is in the spiritual world. And our energy should not be wasted on false hopes. So instead, this energy should be utilized in mal loka kamo mad anugrahataha, just like how we've heard in the shlok today. So these two things are required. One is we need to have that desire to go back home, back to Godhead. And then we have to depend on the mercy of the Lord. So we see that there's hope. We are being told that in this text, that if one is serious about going back home, back to Godhead, he must consider the mercy of the Lord. And in so doing, he's going to achieve the aim of his life. That's the perfection of life, right? So there is a better place for us to strive for, and that is the spiritual world. And what is the spiritual world like? I'm just going to give you a fraction of what is described in Shastra, right? So we learn that in the spiritual world, there's no anxiety, there's no diseases, no deaths, or conflicts or exploitation. We don't experience tornadoes, so we don't have these torrential rains and gusty winds that we're experiencing at the moment. And in the spiritual world, there's nothing but freshness. Even the flowers picked from the trees and plants remain ever fresh. Even the fragrance of the flowers does not fade. And time, well, the time factor just does not exist. And here we are governed by time. Imagine not having to rush to school or to work or to appointments. And in the spiritual world, everyone is absorbed in ever-increasing happiness. But the key factor, that common factor that they all have, is love to Lord Krishna and to serve Krishna wholeheartedly. Their minds, their bodies and words are all connected to Krishna. Krishna is at the center of everything they do. Right? But still, we can appreciate that we know now that the spiritual world is so attractive. But the issue is, why do we want to stay in this material world? Right? This material world is just, there's a rat race going on, right? It's only due to ignorance or dull intelligence that one will not strive for the spiritual world. Questions need to be asked. How can I get out of the rat race? How can I get out of the suffering and achieve everlasting happiness? What do we have to do to attain this the spiritual world? So the answer to all of these questions is that we simply have to practice Bhagavad Dharma, just like the way Lord Rishabhadev is prescribing in this chapter 5. And Srila Prabhupada gives the meaning of Bhagavad Dharma as the relationship with God and execution of our duties in that relationship. And if we look at Bhagavad Gita 9:27, Yat karosi yadasnasi yad shahosi dadasi yat yat tapasyasya kontaya tat kurusvam madarpanam. You know, Krishna is telling Arjuna, whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer or give away, and whatever austerities you perform, do that, O son of Kunti, as an offering to me. So in this way, what are we doing? We are actually reconnecting with the Supreme Lord. Those activities will be the same like what a materialistic person is doing. But the difference here is we are doing it to please Krishna. Samsiddhim Hari Toshanam, right? We are reviving our forgotten relationship with Krishna. And in so doing, we will attain perfection of this life. And that perfection we know is Krishna Prem. And we are so fortunate to have this human form of life. In this form of life, we can achieve that purpose. So this life is not for degradation. It is for elevation. That is an important factor. Now the question is, we're speaking about to get the mercy of the Lord. But how can we get the mercy of the Lord? All we have to do is just approach a spiritual master, right? In Srimad Bhagavatam in 8.3.25, in the purport, it is said that in this material world, every living entity is covered by the darkness of ignorance. Therefore, the Vedas enjoin that one should approach the Supreme Lord through the spiritual master, who is described and offered prayers in the Good Miyak Tantra as follows. Om Gyanatamidandhyasya Gyananjana Shavakaya Chaksur Unmilitam Yena Tasme Sri Guruve Namaha. I offer my respectful obeisances unto my spiritual master, who with the torchlight of knowledge has opened my eyes, which were blinded by the darkness of ignorance. So the spiritual master takes one out of the darkness of ignorance. The ignorance is what's keeping us in this material world. And the Lord will instruct us outwardly in the form of the spiritual master. Therefore, one should not accept the spiritual master as an ordinary human being. And it's further described in Srimad Bhagavatam in 11:17-27, that one should not treat the spiritual master as an ordinary human being, for he is the substitute for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So that's a very, very direct point, isn't that so? He is the substitute for the Supreme Personality of Godhead. So Krishna is speaking through us. He's speaking through the Guru. The Guru is empowered and authorized in our parampara. And the mercy and potency will manifest in their speaking. Therefore, the instructions that we get from our gurus are not ordinary or mundane. Those instructions are there to save us from being in this darkness of ignorance. And their instructions are far greater than any material opulence. It's far greater than billions and billions of dollars that one may get. We know that anything material is temporary, right? And it's going to end in this lifetime. Even this body that we may be taking so much of care of is going to remain in this material world. We can't even take this body. So what to speak of all our family attachments and all our assets and all our belongings, everything stays behind. But the spiritual teachings that we have and the guidance that we have, that's eternal, and it saves us from that greatest danger in life. But in this shlokas that we read today, we also see there's a caution. Rishabhdev is giving us a caution here. He says, be careful. You know, we got to be careful who we choose as a guru. if the instructions are given to improve one's life in the material world, as in, as in materialism, then that's going to keep someone entangled in this material world. Such a guru that gives instructions should be rejected. Okay? Rishabdev says in text 15, if he is a father instructing his sons, a spiritual master instructing his disciples, or a king instructing his citizens, he must instruct them as I have advised. So what is Lord Rishabhadev giving us? He's setting the example, right, of how instruction should be given. Right. So this is disciplic succession, right? This knowledge is descending to us. Krishna is coming as the expansion as Rishabdev. And he's cautioning us against false gurus. Pretty much the blind leading the blind. If I am ignorant, how can I get an ignorant person to show me the way? Right? So in text 15, we had read, ignorant people who engage in pious and impious activities should be engaged in devotional service by all means. They should always avoid fruitive activity. If one puts into the bondage of karmic activity his disciple, son, or citizen who is bereft of transcendental vision, that means in ignorance, right? How will one profit? It is like leading a blind man to a dark well and causing him to fall in. Now we find that this point is going to be further discussed in text 17 and 18 as well. Right? So a big caution for all of us. We are really very fortunate because being in ISKCON, our gurus are bona fide. They go through very stringent rules and regulations before they are appointed as sannyas. But we need to be cautious of not being attracted to gurus who have this sort of materialistic vision. And also we got to help others to make the right decision. So if a guru or leader does not have the spiritual vision, he's like a blind man leading another blind man. Now, if a man is drowning, right, and screaming out, help, help, and someone goes and saves his coat and leaves the man, is the man going to be happy? Obviously not, right? So similarly, if a guru is just looking at saving one's materialism and neglecting their spiritual life, then that is a big no-no. So we don't accept the fake gurus, because all he is doing is leading his follower to hell. I know that sounds quite harsh, but that's the reality, because getting further entangled in materialism means more sinful activity, right? And also that other commonly known analogy of the old lady who had a bird in a cage. So she was busy taking care of the cage, decorating it nicely, keeping it nice and clean, but she neglected the bird. So similarly, the body and everything related to it is being taken care of so nicely. But if the soul is neglected, then that is something that we don't want, right? We want to progress in our spiritual lives. We've been in material bodies for time immemorial. It's time we said enough is enough. This is my last birth in a material body. And we need to work towards going back home, back to Krishna. So some Shastric examples of leaders that were rejected is Hiranyakashipu. Right? We know that Hiranyakashipu was a materialist. He wanted the power, he wanted control, and his goals were all related to this. He will do whatever it took such that he would get what he wanted. But Prahlad Maharaj rejected his instruction. He still respected his father, but he rejected the instructions of his father. And then we find Prahlad Maharaj's grandson, Bali Maharaj. He had rejected his guru, Sukracharya. Sukracharya was more concerned about sense gratification, right? He wasn't concerned about Bali Maharaj's spiritual growth. So Bali Maharaj, we know, renounced everything, right, to Lord Vamanadev. He knew that Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, that he is the supreme enjoyer, the supreme proprietor, Bhaktaram Yagnatapasam Sarva Loka Maheshwaram. So the instructions that Sukracharya had given to Bali Maharaj was intelligent enough to make the decision that these instructions are not right. And he rejected those instructions. So here again, respect can still be there, but we don't have to take the instructions. And just basically, if a guru's practice and instructions are not aligned with Shastra, then he is to be rejected. So the big question is, how can we avoid being cheated by a fake guru? Because we know in this day and age, people are so good at being con artists and scammers, you know, so easy to get caught by them. So this is where we need to do our research. We need to do our homework. Like say, for example, you know, I never knew what a kiwi fruit was and I wanted to buy one. If I go into a store, I need to at least know what it looks like. And then if I get it, what do I do with it? You know, do I eat it as it is or do I cook it? So in other words, I'm doing some research about it. Similarly, if like a lot of us came from other countries to New Zealand, and we needed to know what are the schools like before we could send our children to it. So we did some research, you know, do the schools have the standard that we expect? You know, is it meeting our expectations and will it meet the expectations of our children? So in that way, doing our research and homework needs to translate into choosing a guru as well. Is this guru bona fide? This is what we need to know. Just like how a guru looks at his disciple or chooses his disciples, he sees who's suitable and ready for initiation. We also have, I'm going to say, the right to make sure that the guru is bona fide. So a guru has to be in the disciplic succession and he needs to have knowledge, right? So really expert knowledge on Shastra. So he's not just knowledgeable about Shastra, but he is also following. So it all comes out in his behavior as well. So a person advanced in spiritual knowledge does not engage anyone in material activity. And if he cannot deliver his follower by instructing him in devotional service, then, sorry, there's some disturbance. Can we please mute that, please? So yes, so we need to be involved in devotional service. And that would be a true spiritual master or a true father or mother or demigod or husband who gives the right instructions to progress on the spiritual path. So a guru or leader has the qualities of compassion, mercy, and love, and he won't mislead his followers. He'll guide his followers as per the Shastra and as per the previous acharyas. The prime aim of the father, guru, king, leader is to save the dependent from repeated birth and death. And we find in Shastra, we find many exemplary leaders. We have Lord Ram, we have Parikshit Maharaj, Ritu Maharaj, and now we're reading about Rishabdev. They took good care of their citizens. Their citizens were like their children, right? They made sure that everything was perfectly well for them. And an exemplary leader in our times is none other than Srila Prabhupada. He was like a father to his disciples. Many of them had actually rejected their own parents, but they accepted Srila Prabhupada as their father. And yes, initially, most of them did everything pretty much against the rules and regulations. You know, some of them were involved in intoxication and illicit relationships. But Srila Prabhupada never gave up on them. You know, through the love guidance, support, compassion, and mercy, Srila Prabhupada transformed them from hippies to happies. And as we know that to this day, they are serious, dedicated devotees, and many of them are now preaching worldwide. So we can see how out of compassion and mercy, they are now propagating the Krishna consciousness movement and giving us instructions as to how to stop the cycle of repeated birth and death. So Rishabhdev is giving guidelines as to how the instruction should be given. He says, without being angry, he should continue giving instructions, even if his disciple, son, or citizen is sometimes unable to follow his order. So we can see tolerance is required. Instructions are given according to the follower's understanding of the instruction. So the leader or the guru needs to have discrimination when giving those instructions. Right. We can see when Narad Muni was giving Dhruv Maharaj instructions. Dhruv Maharaj was only 5 years old and he left home and had chosen to do tapasya. And not to get a spiritual goal, but to get a material goal of having a kingdom even greater than Lord Brahma. And he was going to be in the forest with dangerous animals, and he wasn't going to have the opulence of the palace. And Narad Muni was naturally very concerned, and he tried to instruct him to go back home. But Dhruv Maharaj was very determined. He wasn't going to go back. So Narad Muni had instructed him accordingly as to what he had to do. And in that way, Dhruv Maharaj had reached perfection. We know that he had seen the Lord face to face. Narad Muni could have been angry. He could have said, you are only 5 years old and you should be listening to your elders. I am telling you to go back home, and he could have dragged him back home. But no, Narad Muni did what was right for that time. So due to that circumstance. Right, and then we also have, where in Bhagavad Gita, we read how Arjuna was in a state of bewilderment. He didn't want to follow Krishna's instructions, as we read in the earlier chapters of Bhagavad Gita. Arjuna's arguments were all for sense gratification, though. He was concerned about his kinsmen. So he expressed a lot of compassion for them, and he was worried about the destruction of the dynasty. And he was thinking, if I fight or kill, then that means I'm going to be incurring sins, right? So Krishna gives Arjuna the topmost knowledge. And then Krishna is accepted as a spiritual master by Arjuna. So initially he was bewildered, but then he realized that Lord Krishna had the best plan for him. So here again, Krishna was very apt. He was very appropriate in the way he gave instructions and knowledge to Arjuna. Then another example is Narad Muni and Mrigari. Narad Muni didn't give him a whole preaching session on, you need to follow the 4 regulative principles, and one of them is no meat eating. And Narad Muni didn't give him heavy philosophy as to how we should not kill animals. Narad Muni told him, kill them fully. Don't leave them like this, half dead, so that they're suffering, right? So we find here again, there's so much of compassion in Narad Muni's manner in which he gives these instructions. And we know that Mrigari had followed these instructions and he had reached perfection of his life. He reached a state where he wouldn't even trample the ants. So he was walking and hopping over them. And another example is Srila Prabhupada's father, who gave instructions very nicely to Srila Prabhupada. It's mentioned in the Srila Prabhupada Leela in chapter 1, where Gaur Mahan would first apologize to Srila Prabhupada, and he'd say, you are my son, so now I must correct you. It is my duty. So even Chaitanya Mahaprabhu's father would chastise him. So don't mind, he said. Yeah. So we can see the compassion and the love that comes with the instruction, even if the follower is struggling to follow the instruction. And we know how nicely Srila Prabhupada has done this. His instructions came with a lot of compassion. You know, once somebody told him, how can we preach to the drunkards? How can we make them Krishna conscious? And Srila Prabhupada said, every time they drink that alcohol, tell them that they should think of Krishna. Right? So you can see this is not heavy philosophy or heavy chastisement that is given, because there's understanding that everyone is on a different stage on the yoga ladder, and everyone is developing according to a certain pace. So we need to modify instructions so that it suits the individual. So basically, we are learning the art of preaching, right, at the different levels, depending on the capacity of the follower to follow those instructions nicely. So being compassionate, tolerant, patient, understanding, you know, all those good qualities that Vaishnava should have, those are important in preaching as well, right? And Srila Prabhupada, as we know, had all of these great qualities. And his disciples at the start, you know, when Srila Prabhupada had just started, they weren't up to standard, right? Once a very cultured Brajbasi told Srila Prabhupada that your disciples are very uncultured. And Srila Prabhupada said, yes, I know. The Brajbasi continued, you know, they don't know how to behave properly. Srila Prabhupada said, yes, I know. The Brajbasi said, they don't know that you know the correct etiquette. Yes, I know, said Srila Prabhupada. And the Brajbasi went on and on and on, you know, speaking about how uncultured the devotees were. Finally, Srila Prabhupada said, yes, it's a fact, but they will do anything I tell them to do. And that is a good quality, right? They will do anything I tell them to do, right? So they had that excellent quality. This is the foundation of surrender to Krishna, following the instructions of the spiritual master with one's life and soul. There are, of course, many devotees, many devotees of disciples of Srila Prabhupada that are following his instructions, you know, perfectly, nicely. But today I want to talk about one of those disciples, and her name is Her Grace Daivi Shakti Mataji. So some of you may be familiar with her. She is very active in book distribution. And in a recent podcast, she had mentioned that in 1972, Srila Prabhupada had emphasized the importance of book distribution. And via letters, he was instructing his disciples to distribute books. So she was a keen book distributor from then. And she was also keen to go from America to India to distribute books. And she expressed her desire to put Srila Prabhupada's books in all of the schools and libraries in India. And she diligently distributed all the books. And she had realized that some of the universities had Srila Prabhupada's books. And then she realized it was because Srila Prabhupada himself had previously distributed books. So Srila Prabhupada was not just giving the instruction, he was actually leading by example. He is an acharya, right? After 6 months it was, her husband decided to go to America, but she decided that she wanted to stay back in India and continue book distribution. So her husband left, and she had pretty much sacrificed her marriage so that she could continue with following Srila Prabhupada's instructions. So she continues to distribute books. This is 55 years later, and she's now about 74 years old. And despite health issues, she's not just doing book distribution in India, but worldwide as well. So a very inspiring story. And hopefully it would inspire us to distribute books as well, because it is one of the most effective ways of distributing the mercy. So we know that book distribution is very dear to Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada says that this is the greatest welfare activity for all the people. Right? For all of humanity, that's what we are looking at. And somehow or the other, if the book goes in one's hand, if he reads one shlok, his life will be successful. Srila Prabhupada says his books are so potent that anyone who reads them is sure to become Krishna conscious. So it is very valuable service to distribute our books. So the spiritual master is pouring his mercy on us, right? So let's not be miserly with this mercy. Let's distribute it for the welfare or the benefit of all of humanity. In a recent lecture by His Holiness Devamrita Swami, he mentioned some controversy in Los Angeles in the mid-70s when book distribution had started. There was a boom in book distribution. And the book distributors, the Sankirtan devotees, were referring to the 6th verse in the Guru Astakam, Nikunja Yono Ratikeli Siddhi Ya Yalabir Yuktira Peksaneya. They were basically saying that they were, those devotees who were assisting the gopis there. So they were in the spiritual world pretty much. And the other devotees thought, this is just fanatical, and they were outraged by what's happening. And they complained to Srila Prabhupada. And Srila Prabhupada's answer actually shocked them. You know what Srila Prabhupada had said? He said, yes, that is true. So we can see how a dedicated book distributor is actually guiding or paving his way back to Godhead, right? With the guidance of his spiritual master. Now, my Guru Maharaj, His Holiness Janananda Goswami Maharaj, some of you may know that recently he received an award for outstanding advocacy for book distribution. He had also mentioned in a lecture that Srila Prabhupada had said that Sankirtan, this book distribution, continues to go on eternally. How it manifests in the spiritual world may be a little different, but this principle of the heart of Radharani to spread messages of Krishna, always chanting the glories of Krishna, goes on eternally. All right. So just a quick summary. Krishna is eagerly waiting for us to come to him, but the conditioned soul is stubborn. Out of ignorance, the conditioned soul is staying in this material world, trying to squeeze some happiness. It's just like chewing the chewed, lifetime after lifetime. And Lord Rishabhadev highlights the significance of compassionate leadership in steering individuals away from material bondage towards spiritual liberation. Similarly, a bona fide spiritual master is merciful and saves one from this vicious cycle of birth and death. And he guides and engages his disciple in devotional service. So we are fortunate to have that mercy. Let's share that mercy with others. And, I know you are doing it. This is just a reminder for me, I guess. In our spiritual life, the more we give, the more we will receive. And this is in sharp contrast to material transactions, in that the more we give, the less we have. So just to conclude, may Lord Rishabhadev imbue our hearts with wisdom to lead us and others on the path of devotion. And by internalizing these teachings, we can transcend the illusions of this material life and progress towards the ultimate goal of returning back home, back to Godhead, where Lord Krishna is eagerly waiting for us with open arms. Srila Prabhupada ki jai, Grantaraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai. So thank you all for being so kind and listening and being so attentive. We may have a few reflections or realizations.
Hare Krishna Mataji, thank you very much for the very nice class,
Hare Krishna.
and particularly bringing out the instruction of King Rishabdev, which is applicable to all of us, or particularly for those who are aspiring devotees, who try to get rid of this material life and go back to Godhead. And as you have very nicely told, that in this material world, what we are living in, we are under illusion because we have forgotten God. That is our problem. And Rishabdev is reminding us, as we have nicely told, we have to take shelter of our Guru Maharaj or spiritual master, so that we can get the right instruction. Otherwise, we'll be deceived. And if we do not follow the instruction of our spiritual master, who is a bona fide spiritual master, he knows the absolute truth and he can instruct us how we can go back to Godhead. So it is the duty of the spiritual master to guide the disciple, but at the same time, it is the duty of the disciple to strictly follow what the spiritual master says and follow his instruction and consider it as a life and soul. So in this way, Rishabdev is advising his son, and it is an instruction for all of us. We follow the instruction of our spiritual master, and which Prabhupada has given a new situation, facilities for us. This ISKCON, if we follow the instruction of our spiritual master in true spirit and remain in association with devotees, we will not be diverted from our attention of going back to Godhead, and our success will be ensured if we do that. And thank you very much for your nice class. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhuji, for that input. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna, Madhuri, Dhanva Pranam.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you for unpacking these two verses very nicely in so much details. Really good. I really like the point where you mentioned that one of the qualities of a true spiritual master, or bona fide spiritual master, that you should try and get his disciple or dependent out of the cycle of birth and death. You should not get them to do material activities. I mean, you mentioned about fake gurus. So this really distinguishes the fake gurus and the bona fide gurus. Some of the fake gurus are just giving them, his disciple or followers, some tips how to improve health or to get rich. So this is not the aim of life. So in this instruction of Rishabdev to his sons, is very instructive, that the guru should try and get them out of the material life, cycle of birth and death, back to devotional service. So thank you for making this very important point. Thank you very much.
Hare Krishna. Thank you, Prabhu.
Hare Krishna, Mataji.
Hare Krishna.
Thank you very much for making such a wonderful PowerPoint. Because sometimes, you are a visual learner and these pictures and everything adds to our information and made so easy to understand. So what I understood from this, you can learn under the guidance of bona fide spiritual master, and how to distinguish between fake and bona fide spiritual masters. And the one thing I got it, bona fide masters should be very merciful, knowing the background knowledge and the pace of the learner, and anything, related to the learner, which he doesn't know or she doesn't know. So thank you very much for giving that, keep there and stay there and have the guidance of Prabhu.
Thank you, Mataji. Hare Krishna. Okay. If there is nothing else, we can close for now. Is that okay?
Yes, Mataji, it appears there is no other person to make comments. So we can conclude. The class may be concluded. Thank you very much for your nice class.
Vanchakalpatruभ्यश्च
Vaishnava Namo Namaha.
अनंतकोटि वैष्णववृंद की जय। हरे सरदिया माता जी की जय। श्रील प्रभुपाद की जय।
Hare Krishna.
हरे कृष्ण।
Hare Krishna.